Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2 of my journey to a live production set under my progressive house alias Adian. If you watched the first video, if you haven't, watch it quickly, you'll remember I spoke about getting ready for my producer set for the Get Reloaded versus NeoAs event on the 11th of October. If you're watching it before then, you buy a ticket and you can see all of this live. If you haven't, watch the recap video and see how it all went. So again, I don't know how this is all going to turn out. First time doing it. So if you remember in my first video, I spoke a little bit about the setup, but today what I'm going to be doing is focusing on the drum section of it, particularly the TR8S, the Roland TR8S, which you'll recall the intention is to have that continuously running behind my loop sequences, so I can bring things in and out and all the rest of that. So today I'm going to show you how I've set that up. It would have been great if it was just plug and play, but it's slightly more complicated than that, as I've found out. So what I'll do is I'll show you how I've set it up in Logic, how I've set up the TR8S, and I've created a few sort of user patterns and groups already that I'm just trialing out. I probably will, and I definitely will replace it with my own drum sounds. So once I've mastered my tracks, particular kick sounds and snares and claps and all the rest of that, I'll import that into the TR8S and I'll use my own sound bank. So, right, so I'm going to show you how to set it up. And like I said, again, no idea how this is all going to work out, but we'll learn together or have some fun together. So let's have a look. Okay, so let's have a look what I've got running here. Sorry, before I go further, apologies for the glare on the side of the screen here. I haven't quite figured out how to screen record and do the advanced video editing technique yet, so maybe by the end of the series I would have learned how to do that as well, but for now I'm just recording my screen old school style with my camera. So anyway, so this is my Logic Live Loops project setup, the template that I've set up. We'll get through all the rest of it in due course, but today what I wanted to have a look at is at the bottom here. So this is my TR8S input, where I'm taking sound directly from the drum machine. And the reason why I've decided to try it out firstly coming straight into Logic is because I want to do some processing on it, and not just have the raw sound. Use things like compression, EQing, those sorts of things, so it sounds a lot beefier, because on the day obviously I'm going to be in between DJs, so I need to make sure that at least there's a comparable level of sound and neatness to the sound as well. So I want to make sure it doesn't sound thin and all of those kinds of good things. I'll come on to what's on the channel here probably towards the end, but so trying to get the TR8S straight into Logic was a bit of a setup, because I'm coming across via USB, so it's not a direct audio input, so it's all digital. To do that though, it was a bit of an effort. So what I had to do was, because I've got another sound card running which I'm going to be using on the day as well, I needed to be able to tell Logic that there's sound sources coming in from multiple devices. So I had to go into the audio setup and create what's called an aggregate device. So it's a mixture of my Air, which is the sound card, and the TR8S. I've got another one set up here that I've used before, and that was mainly for recording, where I had multiple outs and I could record the kick and the snare and all that separately, but I've set up a separate one for live where I'm just using essentially the stereo out from the TR8S, and I'm going to be balancing the sounds live, as you'll see later on the TR8S anyway, manually. Anyway, so what I've done is I've had to set it up, and what it does is it recognizes, okay, for the audio interface has got all of these inputs, and then the TR8S starts there at 9 and 10, which just remember those numbers because I'll show you what they mean. Those are just the input channels, so where it's coming from the TR8S. So yeah, so there's a bit of a configuration, and I had to say which audio components I want included in the aggregate device. But essentially what all of that means is, if I just close all of that down and open up the project settings in Logic, I'm now able to select that as a sound source. You see I've got various sound sources here, but that's the one that I've just set up. And yeah, that's it. So basically now Logic should be able to take audio directly from the TR8S. Another thing I needed to do as well is from a MIDI perspective is to make sure that Logic is the master and that the TR8S runs off it. So when I hit start, stop, and also when, if you can look up there, there's tempo there, which I'm going to be changing throughout the project as well. That matches, or the TR8S matches Logic itself. And what I also just have to do is do some menu diving here, but I had to obviously make sure the destination for the MIDI output is TR8S, and I had to make sure that it's running by that clock. So in other words, running in time and sequence. So that's the Logic setup. And what I did was when I created an audio track, so it's going to take in audio, I had to zoom in there physically, select the inputs, right? And if you remember 9 and 10, those are the inputs, the first two inputs, which are generally the stereo left and right out. Make sure I select that. And then also I needed to monitor input so I can hear the sound coming in. So there you go. That's all the setup for the TR8S coming in. Just very quickly on the processing, I mentioned wanting to be able to beef up the drums itself. I'm probably going to get rid of this auto filter. That is the high pass and low pass, because I can actually do that on the TR8S itself. But what I've done is I've recently found this little plugin called the Mixboss. Not sponsored by them at all, but what I've been looking for is plugins that can do a few things in one. And the reason for that is to simplify the setup, because I could have gone and created channel strips and all sorts of things like compression and EQ and saturation. But my real concern is that I'm going to be running out of CPU. What I'm running at the moment is a 2020 MacBook. It's an M1 processor plus and also 16 gig of RAM. So, if we had these sorts of machines 20 years ago, great, but it just seems like it's very easy to run out of memory and processing power. So something I'm also going to be doing is monitoring, if I can get it up here, there we go, the performance, the CPU performance all the way through, just to make sure it's not breaching, and don't want everything packing in halfway through a set because I've run out of resources or processing on the Mac itself. And what I'm doing at the moment is I've got loads of stuff loaded up in the background just so that I can check load and make sure it's all good. But anyway, coming back to this little processor, it's got loads of things under the hood, and you can control things like the compression. It's got a multi-band compressor in there, so you can target certain frequencies. So you got high, low, mid. Again, just testing this out just to make sure, and you absolutely can hear the difference. If I, unmute it and play a track, it sounds flat, but if I put it in while the track is playing, it gives it a much bigger sounding impact than without it. So I'm just trying it out, and I'll probably put these sorts of things over most of the channels as well, just to try and limit resourcing in Logic. So that's the processing. Okay, so let's take a look at the TR8S itself. So this is my Roland TR8S, and as I've just mentioned, I'm going to be using this to run all my drums. So whenever you hear a drum sound playing, it's coming from this unit over here. I will be adding my own samples. So for example, my own kicks and snares, tracks that or the sounds that I've used in specific tracks. So I may want to bring it over here. And there is really a very specific progressive house sound as well. So I want to make sure I capture all of that in the drums as well. But essentially what we're looking at here from left to right is a number of sliders, and each one of those represents one of the instruments of a kit. So for example, we've got the kick here, and you can see it running at the moment because I've got it synced up to Logic. Logic has triggered it, so it's playing a pattern that I've defined. So if we have a look at that, that's the kick drum. I've programmed in a very basic beat, on the 1st, 5th, 9th, and 13th. So it's a 16-step sequencer. Essentially, your quintessential 4 on the floor. And then for each one of the instruments, I've added in a pattern as well. We can check that out. So the snare, standard snare. I've got a couple of toms here that I may want to bring in and out, give it a groove. I can, I just want that high tom sound, have a bit of a groove going. Can bring that out if a track needs it or not. Then I've got some of the standard stuff as well. I've got a clap. I can bring that in if I want to swap it out for the snare. Then I've got the hi-hats running as well. So I've got a standard pattern for the closed hat, literally just 16ths, and the open hi-hats as well. But what I've also done is what you're able to do is you can set up accents on here as well. So it doesn't just play the same thing over and over. So on the closed hat, I've set it up so that it's slight variations in volume and tempo and stuff like that. So it gives it a bit of a natural groove. And what's really cool as well, if I just solo the closed hat, for each track you've got a control which then sends it to one of the main effects, whether it's reverb or delay. This one I've got set up for delay. You may hear it there. But then what's also really good is you've got some good control over the sounds itself. So if you don't want to have the same thing over and over, so what I could do is if there's a certain track that needs a bit more of a lower sounding, more grittier hi-hat sound, I can change the tuning, and I can change the decay as well, either make it longer or shorter, depending on what the track needs. And those two, that normally works well with a hi-hat. So there you go, that you get the idea of that. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff you can be doing here. Let me just show you what else I'm going to be doing. So if I just do a kick and the snare and maybe the clap as well, I've set up, you'll see it's playing pattern A at the moment, or variation A. I've set up, well, I will set up loads more, but just this one, just to give you an idea. I can trigger a specific pattern. This one's just got a bit of a slight snare in between, verses or chorus or something like that. So I can just change it and I just switch it back. And that's it, really. So that's the TR8S. It's going to be running all of the drums. It's going into Logic with the audio out of the USB. So I can do some of my effects with it within Logic itself. Again, just to give it a more cohesive, bigger feel. But yeah, most of the controls for the TR8S will be done here. So I'll bring patterns in. I may decide to mute the kick drum. There's some master effects here. What I've got it set up currently is just a standard filter. I can build the tension. And then what's also really interesting as well, something I've tried out as well, is for these last two, they normally you can assign them to a crash or a ride cymbal, but I've assigned them differently. The first one is a kick roll. That I can add in as I need. And the other one is a snare roll, just a simple snare roll that just keeps running in the background that I can bring in. And if I want to bring in the delay that I've added here, if I want to increase the decay and the tuning as well, there we go, and then you've got a nice build up, and I just take it out when I need to. So that's it. So that's the TR8S. Following series, I'll be covering some of the other bits of the equipment, but that should give you an idea of how I'm going to be using the TR8S. And on that note, see you next time.